Braden, stop licking the window. Elijah Dawson's voice echoed down the mall corridor as he tugged his 5-year-old son's sticky hand away from the glass storefront. Do you want to catch mall germs? Because that's how you catch mall germs. Braden giggled, his cheeks flushed from excitement and a little too much free frozen yogurt from the sample stand. Elijah sighed, adjusting the backpack slung over one shoulder, the one filled with snacks, wipes, and a budget coloring book that had already lost most of its pages. They weren't here to shop. They were here to kill time before heading back to their tiny apartment with no working AC. And then the alarms blared, a piercing wail cut through the air followed by a mechanical voice. Please evacuate the building. This is not a drill. People froze. Then chaos. A woman shrieked near the escalator. Another man dropped a bag and took off running. Elijah instantly crouched in front of Braden. Hey, buddy, remember our superhero plan? He said quickly, voice calm but firm. Braden nodded, eyes wide. Stick together. Hold hands. Be brave. That's my boy. Just as Elijah stood, ready to make their way to the nearest exit, he spotted her trapped behind a collapsed display stand near the cosmetics counter, trying to crawl out in heels that looked like they cost more than his rent. She looked terrified, trying to lift a metal rack off her leg. Stay right here, Elijah told Braden, guiding him behind a pillar. Don't move, I'll be right back. Elijah, Braden's lip quivered. I'll be back before you can count to 20. He sprinted. The woman was still trying to push the stand off her leg. Elijah shoved it aside in one swift motion. You okay? He asked, helping her up. She looked at him, startled. Her eyes were this deep, warm hazel. I think so. Come on, we've got to move. She winced as she leaned on him. My ankle, lean on me. I've got you. He wrapped one arm around her waist, guiding her as fast as he could while keeping his eyes on Braden, who was clutching his backpack and watching wide-eyed. As they reached him, smoke began to fill the air from somewhere on the second floor. People were yelling, running. Someone knocked over a trash can and it caught fire. Elijah pulled Braden tight to his side and held the woman close. They made it out through the side exit, into the humid summer air, coughing but safe. Outside, fire trucks pulled in, lights flashing. Security teams directed people to stay back. Elijah led them to a patch of grass near the parking lot, helping the woman sit. You okay? He asked again. She nodded, still catching her breath. Yeah, thank you. Stay here. I'll get some water. He jogged over to the vending machine near the bus stop, slammed in his last few quarters, and came back with one bottle. He handed it to her first. She blinked at him. Aren't you going to drink? I'll be fine. He sat beside Braden, who immediately climbed into his lap. You did awesome, little man. Was that lady hurt? Braden whispered. She's okay now. The woman turned to them, finally finding her voice. I'm Genevieve Ellis. Elijah Dawson, he replied. And this is my superhero, Braden. Genevieve smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Thank you for helping me. You didn't have to. Yeah, but look at you. You were stuck in the middle of chaos wearing shoes that belong in a glass display case. You needed backup. She laughed, a soft, surprised sound. I guess I did. I should probably get this one home. Elijah stood, lifting Braden onto his hip. You going to be all right? I'll call someone. I've got a driver. A driver? Elijah raised a brow. She paused. Well, yeah, he nodded slowly. Right. Of course. Wait, she said quickly, standing on her good foot. Can I get your number? He looked surprised. Why? Genevieve hesitated. Because I'd like to thank you properly. Maybe dinner, he blinked. You want to take me to dinner? Yes. Are you always this forward with guys who carry you out of burning buildings? Only if they're cute and carrying a child like it's second nature. Braden tugged his sleeve. Dad, I'm hungry again, Elijah laughed. Well, I can't argue with that. Here, he pulled out an old receipt and grabbed the pen from behind his ear. This is my cell, but I should warn you, it's a flip phone, no fancy apps. That's fine. Genevieve took it with a grin. I'll call you tomorrow. They walked away, Braden already asking about grilled cheese. Elijah didn't look back. Genevieve did. The next evening, Elijah opened his front door and froze. Genevieve was standing there in jeans, a simple white blouse, holding 2 paper bags from a gourmet restaurant he'd only ever seen on TV. I said dinner, right? He stepped aside, stunned. You actually came. You gave me your number. That's practically a contract. Braden ran into the room, eyes lighting up. You're the lady from the fire, Genevieve grinned. Hey, superhero. They ate on the couch, Genevieve laughing at Braden's dinosaur impressions, Elijah watching her with quiet curiosity. She didn't act like someone who had a driver. She didn't act like someone who wore $1,000 shoes. She acted like someone who wanted to be there. When Braden finally fell asleep on the floor with a blanket, Elijah walked her to the door. I had a good time, she said softly. Me too, she hesitated. You still don't know, do you? Know what? She smiled. I'll tell you next time. And with that, she leaned up and kissed his cheek before walking away down the hall. Elijah stood there, heart thudding, staring after her. He didn't know who she really was, but he could already feel it. He was in trouble. The doorbell rang just as Elijah was rinsing dish soap off a plastic bowl, the evening sun slanting through the cracked blinds. Braden sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor, humming to himself as he tried to peel the label off a juice box. Elijah dried his hands on the towel clipped to the oven handle, heart kicking up slightly. He hadn't expected her again, not so soon. When he opened the door, Genevieve stood there holding a cardboard box that smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. I baked, she said, offering it with a tentative smile. Well, technically, I supervised someone else baking, but I did stir things, twice. You brought dessert, Elijah said, stepping aside. That's bold. I figured I owed you after you fed me last time. Technically, Braden peeked out from behind his dad's leg. Is it cake? It's snickerdoodle bread, Genevieve said, crouching. It's like cake pretending to be bread so it can be eaten at breakfast. Elijah watched her carefully as Braden took the box and darted into the kitchen. You're back, he said quietly. I said I'd be. I thought maybe you'd get caught up, fancy events, board meetings, private islands. I had a gala, she admitted. I left early. He leaned a shoulder against the doorframe. That important, not as important as this. That pulled something in him. He turned away before she could see it. Inside, she kicked off her flats and sat on the floor with Braden, helping him slice the bread with a plastic knife while Elijah leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching the way she laughed when Braden made up a song about sugar. Later, while Braden was in the bath, Genevieve wandered over to the window and looked out at the street below. Her earrings caught the light, understated but clearly real gold. You live just above that bakery, right? She asked without turning. Yeah. The smell at 5 in the morning's a curse and a blessing, she laughed softly. I used to think about what it'd be like to live somewhere like this, where neighbors know each other and people say hi in the halls. You didn't grow up in a place like that, she shook her head. Not unless you count the staff. He walked over, crossing his arms. So what do you do exactly? I'm on the board of Ellis Innovations, she said. My grandfather started it. We design urban infrastructure, transportation, housing models, community tech. Oh, he said after a beat. So you're actually important, she turned to him. Barely. I mostly fight with men twice my age who think I'm there to take notes. Elijah laughed under his breath. I don't think anyone's ever mistaken you for someone quiet. Good. That means the therapy's working. He watched her, the air between them shifting. Why are you here? She met his eyes. Because I can't stop thinking about you. And because you didn't ask me for anything. What does that mean? It means I've had people chase me for my name, my money, my connections. But you ran toward me when I was stuck under a pile of steel, not even knowing who I was. And then you walked away. I had my kid with me, he said. That's not noble, that's survival. It's rare, she said, and I notice rare things. Braden's voice echoed from the bathroom. Dad, I dropped the soap and now it's gone, Elijah turned. Be right there. When he looked back, Genevieve was grinning. That is the most honest interruption I've ever experienced. He ran a hand over his jaw. You sure you want to get involved in this? It's not exactly glamorous. I'm not looking for glamorous. I've had enough of that. I want real. He studied her for a moment longer before heading to the bathroom to fish out the soap. When he came back, she was placing the last of the dishes in the drying rack. You don't have to clean, he said. I know. She checked her watch. I should go. I have to meet with an urban development team in the morning. Something about converting an old rail yard into low-income housing. That sounds like something that matters. It is, but I'd rather be here. She stepped into the hallway and he followed. I'm going to take this slow, she said. But I'm not going to walk away. You don't even know what you're getting yourself into. I know enough, she hesitated. Can I see you again, this weekend? He nodded slowly. Yeah. She smiled and walked toward the stairwell, choosing not to take the elevator. Elijah stood in the doorway long after she disappeared, the hallway quiet. Braden tiptoed out in his towel, hair wet and sticking up. Was that the lady again? Yeah. Is she coming back? Elijah looked down at his son, then back toward the stairwell. I think she is. You're going to be late, Elijah said, handing Genevieve a coffee mug as she stood in his kitchen in an oversized sweatshirt, hair still damp from the shower. I canceled the meeting, she replied, blowing on the surface of the drink. It was mostly fluff. A presentation about eco-conscious concrete and a catered brunch. You canceled a meeting for this. He raised an eyebrow, motioning around the modest kitchen where Braden's crayons were scattered across the table and a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich sat forgotten on a plate. I wanted to see where the real decisions happen. She gave him a look that was light but edged with something deeper. Elijah leaned against the counter, studying her. You're not playing some kind of game, right? Genevieve's brows pulled together. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what this is, he admitted. One day, you're talking about transit infrastructure and the next, you're skipping meetings to eat cereal out of chipped bowls in my kitchen. She set the mug down. I've never done this before. Done what? Let someone into my actual life. She paused. Not the curated version, not the one that shows up in glossy magazines because of who I'm related to. I've never let anyone see the version of me that eats cereal in someone else's sweatshirt. Elijah didn't answer right away. He crossed the kitchen, took the mug, refilled it, and returned it to her hands. You're welcome here. But I need you to understand something. Okay. I don't have anything to offer you. Not the kind of things you're used to, no penthouses, no private chefs. I have a kid who needs me more than anything, and I'm just figuring things out as I go. Genevieve's eyes held his. Then we're both figuring things out. Braden burst into the room at that moment, dragging a shoebox by a string. I made a car, want to see it? Genevieve knelt immediately. Absolutely. While she and Braden set up a makeshift racetrack in the living room, Elijah watched from the hallway, arms folded. There was something about the way she looked at his son like he was a person, not a novelty. Later that afternoon, she stood at the door, adjusting the strap of her leather bag. I have to go to a dinner tonight, board members. It'll be boring and full of people who call me kiddo even though I'm 30. You want me to walk you down? I've got a car waiting downstairs. Right. Of course she did. Will I see you tomorrow? She asked. Braden's got a school thing, I can't skip it. Can I come? He hesitated. It's just a parent thing, papier-mâché volcanoes. I like lava, and I want to be where you are. He watched her for a beat. All right. But don't wear anything that costs more than my car, she laughed, stepping into the hallway. Deal. That night, Elijah sat on the couch after putting Braden to bed, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge. He stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the shift happening around him. Genevieve wasn't what he'd expected. She wasn't what anyone would expect. The next afternoon, she arrived to the school event in jeans and a hoodie with a stain on the sleeve. Elijah blinked at her as she walked up the sidewalk holding a tray of homemade cookies. I tried to bake. They're technically edible. Braden ran up and grabbed her hand without hesitation, pulling her into the classroom where volcanoes erupted with vinegar and food coloring. The other parents looked at her with a mix of confusion and recognition, some whispering behind their hands. Is that? No way. What's she doing here? Genevieve didn't seem to notice. She knelt beside Braden and asked about his project like there wasn't a thing unusual about her being there. Afterward, while the kids played outside, Elijah leaned on the railing beside her. You just going to ignore the whispers? I've ignored worse, she said. You should see what they say when I vote against their contracts. You really don't care what people think. I care what you think. He looked at her, the weight of those words settling between them. You're not scared of this. I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm more scared of walking away before I find out where this could go. He didn't respond. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper. This is the project I told you about, the rail yard conversion. I added your neighborhood to the proposal. He took it, scanning the layout. You didn't have to do that, I know, but I wanted to. This could change everything. Only if it gets approved. They stood there in silence, the spring air soft around them, the playground chaotic and joyful in the background. Finally, Elijah said, "You're not like anyone I've ever met." She smiled without looking at him. "Good, I'd hate to be forgettable." He glanced down at Braden, who was laughing with another kid by the swings, then back at her. This is starting to feel real. It already is. And for the first time since all of this began, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he could let her in. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 days after the school event. Genevieve hadn't called, no texts, no visits. No cookies. No sudden arrivals with gourmet takeout and irreverent jokes. Just silence. Elijah didn't panic. Not at first. She probably had a trip or a board retreat or one of those things people with driver schedules and custom timepieces did. But on the 4th day, when Braden asked if she was still coming to his end-of-month class party, Elijah said, "I'm not sure," and it felt like admitting something heavier. He didn't have a way to reach her. No last name had ever been necessary until now, but Genevieve Ellis wasn't hard to find. He stood outside the Ellis Innovations building the next morning, staring up at the glass tower jagging into the clouds like a monument to a different world. Security looked at him twice, but no one stopped him. He stepped through the revolving doors, clutching a folded sketch Braden had made for her, and approached the reception desk. "I'm here to see Genevieve Ellis," he said. The receptionist didn't look up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "But she's not taking any visitors." "Can you tell her Elijah Dawson is here?" The woman finally glanced at him, her gaze flicking over his scuffed jacket and worn jeans. "I'm sorry, sir, she's not available." He didn't move. After a long pause, the receptionist sighed and picked up the phone. A hushed exchange followed. Then she hung up and said, "Someone will escort you up." A man in a sleek navy suit arrived moments later and led Elijah through a maze of chrome elevators and white marble. When they reached the top floor, the air shifted quieter, colder, more sterile. The man stopped in front of an office with floor-to-ceiling windows and motioned toward the door. "She's inside." Elijah stepped in. Genevieve stood near her desk, arms crossed, wearing an ash-gray blazer and black trousers. Her hair was pinned back, face unreadable. She looked like a stranger. "You disappeared," he said. "I had to. For 4 days." "There was an emergency," she said. "My cousin tried to push through a deal to privatize the riverfront housing project. I had to stop it before it reached the mayor's office. And you couldn't call. I didn't want to drag you into it." "You already did," Elijah said. "You brought me into this, into your world, then vanished like none of it mattered." She stepped closer, voice quiet. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because it matters more than anything." He held out the sketch in his hand, a picture of her holding hands with Braden, drawn in crayon. "He made this for you, thought you were sick." Genevieve took it with trembling fingers. "I didn't expect him to care that much." "He does. So do I." She looked down. "I'm trying to make space for this, for us, but it's not easy. I'm not used to people needing me without wanting something from me." "I don't want anything from you," Elijah said. "I just want you to show up." Genevieve's eyes glistened. "I want to, I just don't know how to do both, this job, this life, and you figure it out," he said. "The same way I do, one choice at a time." She walked around the desk, stood inches from him. "If I mess this up, you already did," he said. "And I'm still here," her breath caught. "Then let me fix it." "Start with dinner," he said. "Tonight with me and Braden, no suits, no drivers, just you," she nodded. "Where?" "My place." A flicker of a smile touched her mouth. "You're not going to let me bring anything fancy, are you?" "Paper plates only." That night, she showed up with a backpack and a ponytail, and Braden shouted her name like she'd come back from a long voyage. They ate grilled cheese and carrot sticks, and afterward, Braden fell asleep in her lap while she read to him from a library book about space. Elijah stood by the kitchen, watching her trace the illustrations with her fingertip even after Braden's eyes had closed. "I meant what I said," she told him softly. "I want to do this right." "You're already doing better." She looked up. "There's something else." He waited. "I talked to the board," she said, "about the Ellis Urban Renewal Project. We're starting with your neighborhood." He stared at her. That's real, she nodded. It's not charity, it's investment. We'll build affordable housing, green space, job training centers, and I want you on the community advisory panel. I'm a single dad who works part-time construction gigs. You're also the only reason I got out of that mall. You're the reason I stopped pretending I liked who I was becoming. He sat across from her. What if this doesn't work? Then we try again, she said, and again, until it does. She reached across the table, took his hand. I'm not going to disappear again. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The next month, they stood together at the groundbreaking ceremony, Braden wearing a tiny hard hat and waving at cameras. Elijah gave a speech that made 3 people cry, including the mayor. Genevieve didn't speak, she didn't have to. She stood beside him the whole time, hand in his, the sketch Braden had made now framed on her desk upstairs. Later that night, on the roof of her building where she'd set up a picnic under string lights and the low hum of the city, she turned to him. I'm in love with you, she said. And not because you saved me, because you stayed. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I love you too, even when you disappear into meetings and come back talking about transit budgets. She laughed, then kissed him, long and deep. Braden appeared from the stairwell with a flashlight and a marshmallow skewer. Are we doing s'mores or what? Genevieve smiled and opened the cooler. We've got enough to feed an army. Elijah pulled her close as Braden set up the tiny fire pit she'd had delivered just that morning. They didn't need a mansion or a private island. They had this. A rooftop, a boy with sticky fingers, and a love built on choosing each other every single day. And it was more than enough. Genevieve stood in front of the mirror, fastening the final button of her pale blue linen dress. Outside the window, the street buzzed with quiet weekend life vendors setting up tables for a local fair, kids riding scooters down the block, a jazz trio warming up in the park across the street. It was the kind of morning she'd never made time for before, the kind she used to think only existed in movies. Behind her, Elijah stepped from the bathroom, towel slung low around his hips, damp hair curling slightly at the edges. He gave her a look that slowed her breath, that unspoken intensity he always carried without even trying. You're wearing that to a community fair, he asked, pulling on a shirt. It's cotton. I'm blending, she said, reaching for her sandals. You look like you stepped out of a luxury travel catalog. Good, she replied. Maybe someone will ask me where I got it, and I'll have to admit it came from a pop-up boutique in Lisbon run by a woman named Alma who only accepts cash and poetry. He paused halfway through buttoning his shirt. That actually sounds real. Was that real? She shrugged with a glint in her eye. Maybe. Braden darted into the room, already wearing his superhero cape and holding a paper ticket in his hand. I get to throw pies at people today. Genevieve crouched. Do we know who those people are, mister? Dyer from math class volunteered. He said he's not afraid of whipped cream. Elijah handed Braden his baseball cap. Just go easy on the arm. Remember what happened with the watermelon toss? That wasn't my fault, Braden said. The watermelon was slippery. They headed down together, walking the 3 blocks to the fair. Every step felt like a memory in the making. Braden ran ahead, cape flapping, while Elijah and Genevieve trailed behind, fingers brushing until Elijah took her hand fully. You never told me, he said, glancing at her. What happened with the board after the groundbreaking? They offered me the position of interim CEO, she said. He stopped walking. That's not a small offer. I told them I'd take it on the condition that I can build out the community investment wing and triple its budget. You serious? I don't want to be the face of innovation anymore. I want to be the reason it actually means something. He studied her for a moment. And they agreed. They didn't have a choice. I own 22% now, he blinked. You bought out your cousin, she nodded. He's happier owning a vineyard in Tuscany anyway. And I'm happier not explaining why people deserve dignity. They reached the fairgrounds, where kids were already forming a line for face painting, and the scent of cinnamon kettle corn drifted through the air. Braden joined a group of classmates near the bounce house, and Genevieve waved to a few parents she recognized from the school event. Elijah turned to her. You know they talk about you now, right? She lifted a brow. Let me guess. Is that the billionaire in the hoodie who brought orange slices to the PTA meeting? He laughed. Something like that. A woman with a clipboard approached. Genevieve, we're behind on the raffle setup. Can you help? Genevieve nodded. I'll be right there. After the woman left, Elijah tilted his head. You really don't mind doing this? Not anymore, she said, brushing a kiss to his cheek. Besides, we're raffling off a weekend cabin trip. I'm trying to rig the results. You're terrible. I'm resourceful. She joined the setup team while Elijah manned the grill, flipping burgers and laughing with one of the other dads. Braden tugged Genevieve into a sack race and she fell halfway through, laughing so hard she cried. Later, when the sun dipped low and the fair began winding down, Elijah found her sitting at a picnic table with a snoozing Braden curled up beside her, his head in her lap. You look good like that, he said, setting down 2 lemonades, like you belong. I do belong, she said. Here with you. With him, he sat beside her. You still planning to move into the new place when they finish it, if you'll help me pick out furniture. Only if you let me veto anything white and expensive. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Deal? They sat in silence, the sky bleeding into lavender and gold, the world slowing around them. Everything felt settled, like the last puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. Elijah tilted his head toward her. I've been thinking about something. Oh, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, square box, her breath caught. It's not what you think, he said quickly, opening it to reveal a key. She blinked. That's a key. To my place, he said. I know you're building your own home, but I figured having a key to this one makes it easier. For drop-ins, sleepovers, pancakes. Her fingers curled around it. You're giving me a key before giving me a ring. I figured you'd want to build the life before we label it. She leaned in and kissed him, slow and certain. You figured right. Across the fairground, Braden stirred, then sat up sleepily. Did I miss the fireworks? Genevieve smoothed his hair. They're starting now. As if on cue, the first burst of color exploded overhead. All 3 of them looked up Elijah with his arm around Genevieve, Braden reaching for her hand. Fire bloomed across the sky, scattering gold and crimson sparks. Around them, the crowd cheered. But Elijah only watched her, the woman who had walked through fire and found a family on the other side. She looked at him and smiled, not the practiced, polished kind that used to grace press releases and red carpets, but the kind of smile that said she was finally home. And she was. They stayed like that until the last firework faded, the night wrapping around them like a promise. Everything they needed was right here. And this time, no one was walking away.